Creating these classes requires equipment and services that cost money. If you appreciate this education, please think about going to EliTheComputerGuy.com and offering a one-time or monthly recurring donation. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class, I'm going to show you how to use PHP to be able to run a select MySQL statement against a MySQL database, and then be able to output the results using HTML so that you can see it in a web browser. So we have the database that we created in previous classes called classDB. We have a parts table within that database, and so basically all this script is going to do is we're going to be able to go to a web page that we have created, and it will simply print out the names and the prices of the parts within that particular table. So this is what I'm going to be showing you how to do today. So the warning for the class today is that you are going to need to have a basic understanding of multiple different types of technology in order to be able to follow along with this class. Again, with a lot of new people, they get into the technology world and they say, what product do I need to know? Or what language do I need to know in order to have a successful technology career? And the reality is that you need to know multiple types of technology and multiple different programming languages. I tell new people getting into the tech industry, you probably need like at least five programming languages really to be able to do the things that you're going to need to do as a coding or as a technology professional. So what we're going to be dealing with today is we have a MySQL database server that we created for previous classes. In that MySQL database server, we have something called classDB as the database, and then we have a parts table that has already been populated. So you're going to need to be able to spin up a MySQL database server. You're going to need to be able to set up a MySQL database, and you're going to need to create a table and actually populate it with records. So that's the first thing that you're going to need to do, and then obviously be able to run a select statement off of that when we're doing the class. Beyond that, you're also going to need a basic understanding of PHP. Now, to be clear with all of this, you do not have to be an amazing expert, but you do need to know what an array is, right? You need to know what variables are, you need to know what an array is, and you have to have a basic grasp of what concatenation is. So those are going to be the main subjects that we're going to be dealing with PHP. And then finally, one of the big things a lot of people kind of overlook whenever they're thinking about developing applications is that you're going to need that front-end language. So all we're using today is HTML, but HTML is what is going to actually format the results and display those results in a web browser so that they actually make sense to the user that is trying to view it. All we're using today is HTML. We're not using CSS or anything else. So they're going to be dirt ugly results. They will be ugly results, but they will be results that people will be able to understand. So we're going to use break, very simple. We're going to use breaks today. We're going to create an output using a table, but you do have to understand what HTML tags are. You do have to grasp what a table is in HTML and how to deal with tables. And so that is the warning for today, is we are getting to the point with these classes where you do need to have a basic understanding of these different types of technology and programming languages simply to get any kind of results that are actually gonna work and make sense for anybody. So with that, let's go over to the computer and I will show you the code and how to use PHP to be able to pull results out of a MySQL database and then be able to format those results in HTML so that you can view them in a web browser. So here we are back at my lab environment. Again, I've got Ubuntu at desktop 18.04 LTS that is running within a virtual machine using VirtualBox, and I have this running on a MacBook Pro. As far as the actual lab environment is concerned, I used something called Tasksel, Tasksel, to install the full LAMP stack on this Linux server. So I have Apache, MySQL, and PHP installed on the system. The only modification I've made at all is I simply created a PHP folder within the Apache public root directory, just so I have a place to dump the PHP scripts and be able to access them for organizational purposes. Otherwise, I have not modified the .ini files or vhosts or anything like that. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to actually take a look at our database and our database server to verify that it looks the way that we think it looks. Again, if you're going to be doing coding for any reason, you do need to be able to reference exactly, again, the database and the tables and everything. You need to know what those names are. You need to make sure everything's populated, so on and so forth. So we're just going to go down to show applications. We're going to do a terminal like normal. Go into terminal. From here, we're going to log into MySQL, SQL, --u, Bob, --p for password, ask me for the password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we hit enter. We are now in the MySQL database. From here, we're going to do show databases, do semicolon. So this will show us what databases we have in this particular database server. The database that we are concerned about is this classDB. So lowercase CLASS, uppercase DB. That will be important when we reference it. Past that, we need to make sure what tables exist. So we're going to use classDB, semicolon. Database has changed, and now we're going to do show tables. So this will show us what tables are in this class DB. And so we have a parts table, a parts backup table, and a vendors table. The parts table is what we're going to be concerned with today. So we do need to verify that there are records in the parts table. So all we're going to do is we're going to do select all from parts. So this will select all columns, all rows from the parts table. And so we can see, okay, we've got a part ID, a part name, a part price, a vendor ID, COG, part price is $11.50, ROD, part price is $2.50. So we have verified what database we're dealing with. We verified what table we're dealing with, and we have verified that there are actually records within the particular table. And what's also important is that we know what these column names are so that we know how to reference. So past that, we're then just simply going to go to GEdit in order to write the code. Now, many times when I do these classes, I will actually write out code as I go, but this code is getting to be a little bit long at this point, so I've previously written this out, and we will simply walk through it so that you understand what's going on. Now, to be clear, I used GEdit in order to create this code, so you don't need some fancy IDE or some fancy editor in order to be able to write PHP code. Again, you can use Notepad, you can use TextEdit, you can use GEdit if you want. The only modifications here is if you go to Preferences, I turned on Display Line Numbers, and I turned on Highlight Matching Brackets. So let's go in here and take a look at this. So this is called the PHP, uppercase S, so select.php script. That's why I named it. And we start off with the $PHP. So we actually have to open up the PHP script. Past that, we have created the variables for connecting to the database server and the database that we're going to be dealing with. So we have $server name, and so the value for that is going to be a localhost. So since the MySQL server is on this particular machine, right, we're just going to be accessing the localhost. Username, so basically you have to have a username that's going to be connecting to the database server. And so the important thing is that it has the user account that you're using has the privileges required to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? So if you created a user account but you forgot to give the user account privileges, you might run into problems. So at least, again, when you're doing testing, give your user account basically root level permission so it can do whatever the hell it wants. And then once you verify that your code works, then go back and start removing permissions for the particular user account, or create a specific user account that only has the permissions that you want it to have. So we have $username, and then we're using our trusty root account Bob, then $password. The value for that is going to be the password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're down here, we have $DB. So this is the database that we're going to be connecting to. And so again, class, and then uppercase DB. So class DB is the database that we will connect to. Then we come down and we actually have to create a variable for the connection. So we're going to create a connection to this database server and the database on the database server. So we create a variable called $conn. You can name this whatever the hell you want. But it has to equal a new MySQL And then from here, we pass the values for server name, the value for username, the value for password, and the value for database. Again, just to remember, you can actually directly put this information right here instead of referencing variables. But again, it's more professional, more professional to create a variable and then to pass the value for the variable here. But this is what it is. So the first one is server, the server that you're connecting to, then the user account, then the password, and the database. So this is how you write everything out. So that's the connection. Then we're going to go down here and we're going to have an if statement. So basically, if for some reason we cannot connect to the database that we are trying to connect to. So we're going to use $conn, hyphen arrow, and then connect error. So all this is saying is if there is an error, then spit out a result. Then we have the bracket. The first thing that we're going to do is die. We're going to kill the connection. Then we're going to say connection failed. So double quotation marks, connection failed. And then we're going to use the period. So this is going to be a big thing that you're going to be using whenever you're pulling results out of a MySQL database using PHP and outputting to something like HTML, is you're going to be doing a hell of a lot of concatenation. It's going to be all concatenity around here. But basically what the period does in the PHP world is it super glues two things together. So what we're super gluing together here is we want to say the words connection failed, and they're going to have period, and then $con -arrow, and then whatever the connection error is. So we're going to say if the connection fails, if there is a connection error, then say connection failed, and then spit out what the error is, right? And then we're going to close the bracket. So this is simply, if that happens, give us the error. If not, it's going to keep going through the script. The next thing that we're going to get to is $SQL. So this is going to be the actual SQL statement that we're going to be passing to our SQL server. It's going to equal, and so all I'm doing here is select all from parts. So this is the place that you can insert your SQL statement. So you could have an inner join here, you can have an order by here, you can have a where here, you could do select part name, comma, part price here. I am doing select all from parts just to make this easier to read. But basically here, when we're doing that select statement, any select statement that you know how to write, you could put here. Again, inner joins, where, order bys, the whole 9 yards. This is just simply what's going to be passed, and then we're going to print out the results of whatever it is. Then we're going to come down here. We're going to create a variable called $result, and the value of variable $result is going to be connection. So basically this variable up here, hyphen arrow, and then we're going to run the query function. So the query is, we're going to send a query, we're going to send a SQL statement to the MySQL server, and then it's going to be the value for $SQL. So basically we're going to send this to the SQL server with this result variable. And so then we come down here. So if $result hyphen arrow number rows is greater than 0. So basically, if there are more records than 0, we are going to do what's in between the brackets here. Else, so basically, if there are no records, then we're going to simply echo 0 records. So again, this is an important thing to be thinking about when things fail out, knowing why they failed out. Did it fail because you didn't write a proper SQL statement, or did it fail because there are no records to find? So that's all this is. So if there are records, do what is between the brackets here. Else there are no records, then you're going to echo 0 records. You're going to say 0 records. So assuming there's more than 0 records in there, then we're going to do a while statement. So basically what this while loop is going to do is it's going to loop through, and as long as there are records, it's going to be printing those records out onto the screen. So while $row, so basically this is just an internal variable. So while $row equals $result fetch association. So this is where it's going to go into this. So result equals connection query to SQL. So it's going to start fetching. And so while row, then it's going to say echo. So it's going to echo out, it's going to print out. And then it's going to do row, and then we're going to print out part name. So this is the column. So we go back and we look at the table. So that $row, this is an array. So we're going to say print out part name. So row, print out part name, and then we're going to concatenate. We're going to put a little space in between, and then we're going to do a period, and then we're going to do row, print out part price, and then we're going to do concatenate, and then we're going to break. So basically what's happening here with this row is we're creating an array. So an array is basically a variable with multiple different values and different indexes. And so we're going to have a part name index. And so we want to print out the value at part name. And we're going to have a part price index. And we're going to print out the value at part price. So these correspond to the column names that we've created, and it's simply going to print those out. Then at the end, again, since we're dealing with HTML, we're going to do a break. So it's going to break to a new line, and it's going to continue to loop through until it gets to the end. Once it gets to the end, it'll drop out of that while loop, and then we'll do $connection, conn, this this variable here, and we're simply going to close that connection. So what that looks like, so we go up to Firefox. I've already saved this. I've already saved this PHP script. So we're going to go to 127.0.0.1/php/, and it's called phpSelect.php. So phpSelect.php. And then we're going to hit enter. And so now we can see the results. So we get cog at $11.50. We get rod at $2.50. We get sprocket at $5. Again, if we go here and we take a look at the table, actually within MySQL, we can see that everything lines up. Cog 1150, cog 1150, rod 250, rod 250. And so this is a way to be able to print out the information from the table in the MySQL database to basically just an HTML web browser. Now, as far as this goes here, basically you could print out whatever column that you wanted. So we go back to MySQL, you can see that there's a part_ID here, you have a vendor ID. So basically if you wanted to print out that information, you would simply reference that in this particular array. So, oops. Where are we at? So here, again, so you could do vendor_ID instead of part price. So let me just do that for a second. So let's do vendor_ID. Then what we can do is we can hit save. Then we go back to Firefox. And then if I hit refresh, then we have the name and then we have the vendor ID instead of the price. Right? So I go back and then again, I can do part_price as I had before. And then I can hit save, go to Firefox, and now it's back to the price. So what we're doing here is we're referencing the value of those particular columns. And so $row here, all we're doing is we're plugging in the column name. So this is the basic idea of how you're able to go into a MySQL database and be able to pull information out of the table. Now, if you take a look at this though, you can see that this is kind of ugly, and this is where HTML becomes important. HTML and CSS and all of those other languages that are required to make websites pretty. So I've created another script here, and this is called phpSelectTable.php. And so what this does is it puts these results into a table so it looks a little bit better. So if we go through here, we basically have the same stuff that we had before. So we have the connection information, we have the if there's a problem, we have the SQL statement, we have the results, the whole 9 yards. But then what we do here is after result, we're going to echo, and we're going to echo information in order to create a table. So we're using the table tag to create a table. And then we're creating cells within the table that are table heads. So these are rows. So we have table row, and then we have a table head. So we're going to call something name. We're going to close table head. Then we're going to have another table head. We're going to have a price. We're going to close that table head, and then we're going to close the row. So this is going to create a table, and then across the top, it'll then say name and price. Then if we look down here, as we while loop through the results, we print things out, now we're going to concatenate on what's required in order to create a table. So we're going to have the tag for table row, then the tag for the actual cell within the table, TD. Then we're going to print out the part name. We're going to close that particular cell. We're going to open another cell, concatenate on. We're going to have the part price. We're then going to close that cell and then close that row. It's going to loop through. Once everything is done, finally at the end, we are going to echo to close the table tag. So this is a way that we can print out the same information that we were looking at before, but now we can put it into a table to try to make it look a little bit prettier. So if I go here, again, 127.0.0.1 /PHP /PHP select table. Then we're going to hit enter. Oops. And so now here I have a bit of a typo, but as you can see, so we have the table head, so name and price is at the top, then we have cog, then we have the price, and then we have rod, then we have the price, then we have sprocket, and then the price. And so this is a little easier to look at, this is a little prettier to look at than what our initial thing was. So this is just printing out the information all on a single line, nothing is spaced, nothing is formatted. What I want to show you here is that you can actually start to format the results results more. Again, you can use colors, you can do sizes, you can do fancy things with tables, the whole 9 yards, just basically off of how you print things out when you're running the PHP script. So that's the basic of how you're able to go and access tables and be able to do a select statement off of tables within a MySQL database and then be able to print out that information to a web browser. So there you go. You now know how to use PHP to be able to access your MySQL database, be able to pull out records from a table in that MySQL database, and then be able to print out the results. So this is all relatively simple from this point on. Again, that select statement that I showed you in the example, you can modify that select statement in order to get different results. So you can do things like the where. So where like a part name equals something, you could then do a select and only the result where the part name equals that will pop up. You could do an order by. So if you want to sort basically how things are ordered, you could do an order by in that select statement. So you can do all of those interesting things. You can do, instead of doing a select all, you could do a select where you only select the specific column names that you're looking for the information for. That would be the proper way to do it. I did the select all just to make it be a little simpler when you're learning this, just to be able to select all the columns and then only print out the columns that you actually care about. So when you go through, basically you're going to create that $SQL variable, and then the value is going to be the SQL statement that you've created. You're going to do you're going to create the $result variable. That's going to be the connection. So it's going to connect to your database server, and it's going to run the SQL statement based off of that. And then you're going to have a while loop. So essentially what's going to happen is when your PHP code goes to the record at that table, it's going to turn that record into an array. So an array is a variable that has multiple values, basically at different indexes. And so then what you're going to be able to do is then you're going to print out the specific indexes in that array that you care about. So for this particular example, I showed you where we printed out the part_name and the part_price, and those were printed out in the while loop. But I also showed you could change it to the vendor ID. You could change it to whatever column is there in that table relatively easily. And then past that, the thing that you need to be thinking about is then how are you going to be formatting this information when it prints out onto a web browser. That's where a lot of people fall down when they create these kind of basic apps is you have the code. So the code grabs the information from the MySQL table and then it spits it out onto a web browser and it looks like absolute crap. Right? So the important thing for you as a professional is you're going to have to think about how should this information be formatted. Should it be in a table? Should there be colors? What size should the fonts be? All of that kind of stuff is things that you have to think about, and then you have to code that into your PHP code. You do that concatenation. So using a period, you're able to attach different things together, and so you kind of super glue together what will turn out to be a pretty HTML report, and then you go from there. And you just have to be pretty careful. Again, when you're dealing with concatenation, when you're dealing with HTML tags, when you start making this a little bit more complicated, you can run into problems. Again, if you misspell something, if you forget to close a tag, or if you forget to open a tag, you can run into those kind of issues on the HTML side. So you do just have to be careful with that and expect to go through and proofread your results, make sure everything looks and acts how it's supposed to. So that's a basic class on how you can use PHP in order to access a MySQL database table and be able to pull out the results and then be able to print them with HTML. As always, I enjoy doing this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Apparently, the type of content you just saw is not what Susan W. wants for the future of YouTube. This means that recommendations by YouTube to this channel have dropped massively and views are becoming comically small. I hate to ask. I used to say I would never ask, but if you could subscribe, like, comment, and most importantly, share the videos that you appreciate, that may help slow the death of this channel. Do remember that if anything at all happens to this channel, you can go to EliTheComputerGuy.com to view the content and access information not available on YouTube.